right, let's dive right in. Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking the really fascinating history of a monarch who was incredibly generous, and this is a big but, he didn't just hand his wealth away to anyone who asked. We're looking at the wisdom of King Vikram Singh of Bharatpur. Now, he was famous everywhere for being a deeply charitable ruler, but he had this incredibly peculiar and honestly brilliant gateway to his charity. He used complex brain teasers to test the true wisdom and character of the people asking for his help. Simply put, if you couldn't solve his riddles, you weren't getting the gold. Simple as that.
So it really makes you wonder, right? Would you actually be clever enough to earn the king's gold? This strict rule of his, it wasn't about being cruel or stringing people along. It was about making absolutely sure his wealth went to people who possessed genuine presence of mind. The king firmly believed that true wisdom wasn't just about memorizing facts, it was about lateral thinking. It was about problem solving under serious pressure. To get his financial backing, you literally had to survive an intellectual gauntlet. So let's look at exactly how tough these tests were. We actually see this uncompromising standard immediately in our very first story. A desperate man shows up at the king's court. He tells the king, "Look, I'm a weary traveler from far away. I was robbed of all my money by bandits," and he begs for some financial help so he can just finish his journey. The king, being the king, agrees to help, but with a condition. He looks right at the man, pauses, and says, "You say you are a traveler, but in reality, there are only two true travelers in existence. Name them."
Now, take a second. Who are the only two real travelers? The robbed man just stood there, completely stumped. And honestly, I'd probably draw a total blank here too. He's frantically trying to think, merchants? Nomads? Pilgrims? But nothing seemed to fit the cosmic scale the king was looking for. Eventually, he just had to throw his hands up and admit defeat, apologizing because he simply couldn't figure it out. Well, the king reveals that the only eternal, true travelers are actually the celestial travelers, the sun and the moon, just constantly moving across the sky without ever resting. And because the man failed the test, the king stuck to his guns. He absolutely refused to give the man a single coin. Now, he mercifully gave him a bed in the palace for the night, but this perfectly establishes just how rigid the king's tests were. You had to earn his charity through your intellect, period. Okay, so this brings us to the core of our explainer. Enter Kishan. He's a poor Brahmin, and he is desperate. His daughter's wedding date is rushing up, and he has absolutely zero funds to pay for it. And we all know how wildly stressful wedding planning is, even without needing to solve a royal riddle just to get a budget. But the stakes are sky high, so his wife convinces him to go see the generous king. Knowing full well about the king's fearsome reputation for riddles, Kishan decides not to go it alone. He bravely brings his two bright sons, Ajay and Vijay, to face this gauntlet together. So the king decides to test Kishan, the father, first. He weaves this story about a neighboring princess named Padma. She's a brilliant woman looking for a husband, and she has 4 extraordinary suitors to choose from. First up, a weaver who was an absolute master of finance and saving. The second was a linguist who could literally speak the language of any animal. Third was this brilliant scholar who had all the ancient scriptures perfectly memorized. And the fourth, an archer who could hit his targets flawlessly while blindfolded, relying entirely on sound.
The king stops the story right there in its tracks, looks dead at Kishan, and asks the ultimate question. Out of these 4 incredibly skilled men, which suitor does Princess Padma actually choose? Now, I want you to really think about this for a second. How do you weigh financial genius against, say, ultimate scholarship or martial prowess? It's a tough call.
But Kishan, he doesn't miss a beat. He brilliantly figures out the answer, not by looking at who has the objectively best skill, but by understanding the specific context of the princess herself. He tells the king, Princess Padma chooses the blindfolded archer. Why? Because as a princess, she belongs to the Kshatriya class, the warrior caste. So naturally, a Kshatriya would seek out a husband with martial warrior-like skills. The king is hugely impressed by this practical societal wisdom, but the test is far from over. The gauntlet continues. Now it's time for the first son, Ajay. The king tells another story, this time about a poor farmer named Raman. Raman's mother falls terribly ill with this raging fever, and to save her, the doctor says she needs advanced treatment in the city. The cost? A staggering 20,000 rupees. That is a massive sum of money, and the farmer just does not have it. Completely out of options, the farmer goes to the village moneylender, this notoriously greedy guy named Seth Dayaram.
Daeron wants to refuse, but he technically agrees to the loan with this twisted, seemingly impossible condition. With this mocking sneer, he tells the farmer, "I will give you the money only if you bring me air in one paper and fire in another." And if the farmer uses literally anything other than paper, the whole deal is off. It's a crazy physics puzzle. So the crucial point here is, how on earth do you solve that? The farmer goes home absolutely devastated. But his sick mother hears the problem, and she instantly figures it out. Think about it. How do you safely carry fire and air in paper without the whole thing just bursting into flames or the air escaping?
This right here brilliantly illustrates lateral thinking. The king asks Ajay for the mother's solution, and Ajay nails it. The mother folds a piece of paper into a traditional hand fan. Boom! She's cleverly bringing air in paper. Then she crafts a kandil. That's a traditional, intricately designed paper lantern that safely encloses a flame without the paper itself ever catching fire. The farmer drops both on the moneylender's desk and walks out with the 20,000 rupees. The king is absolutely thrilled with Ajay's sharp intellect here. But we're not done. There is still one son left to test, Vijay. The king turns to him for the final, and I think probably the trickiest riddle. He commands Vijay to go out into the kingdom and return by evening with two very specific men. The first must be a man who has never, ever told a lie. The second must be a man who has never, ever told the truth. Evening rolls around, and Vijay comes back to the king's court. But surprisingly, he doesn't bring two men. He brings exactly one single individual. The king is visibly confused. He demands to know why Vijay couldn't follow basic instructions, but Vijay just smiles. He explains that he didn't fail at all. He actually found one single person who perfectly embodies both of those impossible traits. How is that even possible? Vijay reveals the twist. The man he brought is completely mute. Because he literally cannot speak at all, he has technically never told a single lie in his entire life. And using that exact same logic, he has never told a single truth either. It is a flawless, undeniable answer to a deliberate trick question. Vijay proved his presence of mind was just as sharp as his family's. He realized he could bend the rules of the problem to find the actual solution. The king is ecstatic. Kishan and his sons didn't just walk in and ask for a handout. They truly proved their worth. By solving the riddles of the Kshatriya princess, the paper lantern, and the mute man, they earned the king's ultimate respect. And as a reward for that collective wisdom, the king goes above and beyond. He doesn't just hand them a small donation, he warmly declares that he will personally fund and host the daughter's entire wedding, himself. A total game changer. So what we really learn from King Vikram Singh's court is that true wisdom isn't just reciting facts from a textbook. It is situational presence of mind. It's the ability to look at a totally impossible constraint, like carrying fire and paper or finding someone who never lies, and shifting your perspective to find that hidden, practical solution. So I'll leave you with this. How are you going to apply this kind of lateral thinking to the seemingly impossible problems in your own modern life?